What is up, bass heads and party people in the place? It is your boy, the OG Soda Pop Kid, coming to you direct with another video again. That's where the voltage is sitting at. After running, I had it running. Okay, I'm going to give you guys some insight and some history on before I went with a serpentine belt setup and some other stuff that I'm going to talk about that I was thinking about earlier. Okay, so, I've been getting some pretty good footage up on YouTube and stuff like that about this build. And I had talked about in the past of how long I've been into car audio. Going all the way back to 1990 when I first got my driver's license at age 25. So I wasn't competing back then, but it was all about who was the loudest in the neighborhood and who thumped in the neighborhood back then. And no, I was not the loudest in my neighborhood at the time. And I still was learning because I didn't build my own stuff at the time, but I started learning little by little on my own, pretty much, and then getting advice from guys like George Fidel and Paul and guys like that from up at Audio Communications. And then I told y'all about how many car audio shops we had. You know what I mean? So there was one shop I forgot about called Kicks. That was in Plum. Okay. We had Dr. Frankenstein franchise. That was in Blawnox. We had Audio Communications, Yaka Brothers, and Speed of Sound, who was all in Monroeville. Okay, we had Powerhouse Audio that was out there on Route 88. It was out on 51 or 88 out there, going towards Century 3. I'm pretty much, so that was 51. Okay, Powerhouse Audio was out there. Okay, and let me think of another one. Oh, Dr. Ray's, which was in Marysville. Okay, and what each one of those places had sold. And this is back in the day when Kicker, Pow Pounders, Rockford Fosgate Punch Series, Lanzar came around. It was Pyramid. Okay, I forgot about Sanjoy Dad's down there in the Strip District that sold Pyramid and Lanzar, but first it was Pyramid. Forgot about him. He wasn't a car audio shop, but he was a place that sold all kinds of electronics like home theater and home speakers and amplifiers and stuff for your house, as well as the Pyramid stuff along with the amplifiers and all of that. And with all I ran. Okay, and all the stuff that I ran. And then American Basic came around. It had the flag on the cone. Okay, on the dust cap. They had the flag. All right, so 1990, I was out there just street beating. You know what I mean? And there wasn't too many contests that came around that we knew about. I know Audio Communications had a couple themselves. You know what I mean? And the Super Bowl sound that was held down at Three Rivers Stadium. Okay? And I remember going there and seeing Dr. Frankenstein, which not too long later, a young guy opened up a Dr. Frankenstein franchise in Blawnox, like I said. And I remember that guy running himself 418s and stuff like that. Back when 149.9 meant something. Okay? So let's keep this going. You know what I mean? So that's some of the history. I've given history. You guys that are watching my YouTube channel, man, I have more than one video up there, man. I have several videos, so go through the videos and watch them. One guy recently came up on there. I was like, man, you're always showing the amps and the alternators, man. How come you'll never show the speakers? Well, first of all, I got videos up on here of me demoing all kinds of subs that I had in the car and brands that I had in the vehicle, and I'm demoing. Go watch them, dude. You can see what subs I'm running. The Resilient Sounds Platinum V2 12s. I have 9 of them. And 9 amps. one per 8K, and I got three sets of Stetson Stetson Bravo HQ 800.4s on the doors, which I just got them. Okay, so that's what I'm running. I mentioned that I'm going to add another. That's a 4-inch C-flow fan there. I had a 3-inch one there. I'm going to get another 4-inch and put it on this side. And I said I was going to move that power right there to the side over there. You know what I mean? So I could have room to put the other fan to get it to blow. Now, I did try a full wrap. I showed y'all the video where I had a full wrap in the S formation. It's back in the Z formation, as I say, that goes around the crank and the water pump pulley. It's back in the Z formation. I had it in the S formation where I had more wrap, and it did nothing but squeal when we went out to go demo. Whenever I come to a stop and pull off, it's screaming. And it would stop as I picked up speed, but no. So I went back to the Z formation. This is the best wrap it's going to get. I mean, seriously. I dropped down the size belt to a 506 1143 when I usually use a 506 1150, which is 0.7 of an inch bigger. And then I would put the bigger idler pulleys on there. So with this belt, I got to drop down sizes of the idler pulleys. Okay, and when you do that, every time I do something like that, a different alternator gets hot, which is comical. Now it's number 3 that gets hot. It either would be 4 or 1. Now it's 3, and that's the case of me dropping down idler pulley sizes. It's comical, man. It's comical how that happens. But nevertheless, I explained why I went back to those alternators, the 320s too. So I'm realizing something. Okay, like I said, trial and error. There's always an advantage to a disadvantage. Okay, what I notice about these 320s is this. You see the voltage? They can handle that. They can keep pushing through that. 16.05. Okay, I can turn it up. I already explained that the Stetson Bravo series, they handle 17 volts, including the little amplifiers, 800.4. They can handle 17 volts. So now I can turn my voltage up into the 16s now. Okay, when I had the American-based VFL 250.4s, they don't like 16 volts. So you can turn it up to 15.5 and 15.8 and all that. Once I get to like 16.2, they will not come on. So that's another reason why I wanted those Bravos. Now I can turn my voltage up and drive around like this, because this is an old school car. This ain't a computerized vehicle. This is carbureted. Okay, so there's some advantages with this voltage. I can have it up like that. Okay, I can have it up like that and don't hurt anything. Technically, I had it on a 15.9 something is what I had it on. So these transpose might have moved a little bit when I was out there basing. Okay, so that's that. That's just a little bit of history. So I went back to these because at first there was a little controversy with these because, as I explained, the last ones, 320s that I had was in the big cases. It was made by Jonathan Patrick before he left CES. That was in 2019, right before Slamology. Okay? And I never had an issue with those alternators at all. In fact, I never should have gotten rid of them. What I had thought, okay, I thought that they were bogging down my engine because of what they were and that they were 320s. I thought that, but I was wrong. So I went back to the 220s to find out that the 220s, now you can't go past 15.5 volts, even though I have a big ass C-Max 190 amp hour C-Max back in the trunk. Once you go past like 15.6, they start acting funny. And the belt starts squealing. You know what I mean? The belt starts squealing real bad and slipping, and that's kind of crazy. And that's what started happening when I tried to go back to those to give them the voltage that I wanted. You know what I mean? And that my alternator guy down at Murray Automotive Electric, which I did explain to y'all that they don't build no big high amp alternators like these. They do stock stuff. They know how to rebuild stock stuff. They won't do these because they say there's too much problem doing these. Kevin is not a fan of big amp alternators because he feels that technically for only 20 more amps or something like that, you get overcharged for it. And he just don't, he's not a fan of them, period. You know what I mean? So he had put these up against the 220s on his machine. And yes, the bigger case 220s do more at idle, but then when you get up there, they don't like that. Okay, these love that up there. And with this being an old school classic car, these engines, like on the, you have an idle knob down there where you can turn the idle up real easy on these. You know what I mean? So I like my idle running at like 880, 880 RPM, something like that, which I like them running at, basically. Okay, so I can turn them up and then give them more RPMs and and stuff like that. You can do that with these. The computerized ones, I guess not. Okay, so there's an advantage to that. So that's why I put these back on, and then I grounded them. I re-grounded them, and this time I grounded them straight to the casing. You know what I mean? Instead of taking the ground all the way down to those screws down there, I was able to pull the plastic off. I watched how Tony did that, pulled off the plastic, and then I grounded them right to, let me go back here. So I grounded them to the chassis. Bam. Instead of taking them down to the bolts there. All right, so when I take them off, I ain't got to take those off. I can just take off the fields right off. Boom, boom, boom. So, like I said, I get some good views on Facebook and YouTube, and there's still haters out there, man. There's still cats that like to come up on YouTube, and that's what they get their kicks out of, just hating on people's builds. You know what I mean? For no apparent reason, man. Like, I may get 40 or 50, compliments to one or two haters. And one dude came up on there, and he said something like, he said something, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he pretty much was saying this is junk. You know what I mean? And somebody jumped up on there, my boy David Walton jumped up on there, which I missed and took up for me. He's like, how do you call something that's doing 160 plus on music a junk, bro? And dude had no answer back. You know what I mean? Because this time I wasn't about to go up on there and be arguing with people, man. This time, I'm just hitting block buttons, man. I ain't got time to be arguing with no kids, dude. I ain't got time for that, bro. I'm tired of arguing with cats, with haters up there. And every time this happens on YouTube, I'll go up on the person's page to see what he's working with. And I do that on Facebook, too. I'll go up and see what you're working with, if you're working with something any better or louder than what's built here. You know what I mean? It's funny that wherever I pull up at, any auto parts store or that same Advance that I've been going to for years, and I lift my hood up, and I'm letting the alternators cool down, and customers are coming in, they get real interested in what in the world is going on up under this hood. Every single time. This is for years, dude. For years I've had people admiring my car way more. I could say it's 100 people liking it to 2 people not. You know what I mean? And then, man, they got a bunch of questions, and yo, man, 4 alternators, man, and they're losing their mind. And I try to tell them, well, there's people out there with 5 or 6 alternators or more. But they don't know that because they're not into this. They're mesmerized by what they see right here and all the stuff that's under here, and they want to know what it's all about. And I'll come right out and explain it to them. I'll point to everything, explain it to them, tell them what's in the trunk, tell them how much power it's doing, tell them about the subs, tell them about everything I did in the car, including the dashboard I built back in 2010, You know what I mean? I'm thinking about doing another one and all this other stuff. I talk about the car. You know, they talk about a custom-made flat made out of steel bumpers. Those are 100-pound bumpers. I designed those bumpers. I sat down and designed them. I did all the measurements to the holes from side to side and everything, and took them to a metal shop, a steel shop called Glenshaw Steel. It's owned by a guy named John, and they built exactly what I designed, exact measurements and all. I designed them and designed that alternator bracket, which I want to paint. I want to take all that out, pull it off, and paint it black is what I want to do. Okay, whenever I get the energy and time to do that, I'll do that. And I get, people to come in the barber shop. I'm showing all this in my barber shop. I'm showing pop locking videos in my barber shop, you pop lockers. I'm showing them, y'all. I'm showing all this in my barbershop, bro. And my customers are entertained by all of this and all my videos they're watching and what's under this hood. You know what I mean? So the haters, I got way more people that like this stuff than the haters. So with the haters, I ain't got to argue with you guys, bro. I'll just cut you off. Cut you right off, man. I'll just hit the block button and get rid of you. And to be honest with you, that hurts them more than you argue because they want cats to argue. They want to argue. So I'll just ignore him. I ignored this guy and cut him right off. Once I did that, I saw that my boy Dave Walton had already went at him. And I was like, I got rid of the clown. He's a clown. I just got rid of him, man. And that goes for anybody else, man. For somebody, I'm doing almost a 63 now. It's going to do a 63. I had little complications on the 6th of April. I did a 162.96. All right, like I said, I'm getting ready to buy a meter with a laptop meter. You know what I mean? So I can get a little bit more accuracy, man, and so on and so forth. I ain't got to be calling up the company whenever their meter starts acting up. So if anybody wants to buy that SSA, you can get it, go online and find out what to do with it. Man, I'll sell it to you for $150, man, if you need a meter, a small meter, dude. I ain't gonna have no use for that no more once I get to, it's called an SPL lab. That's what I'm buying. I talked to one of the guys that worked out all the kinks and stuff. I talked to Adam, about it. I went checking on some little laptops at HPs is what I was looking at because they're affordable. But you might be able to get them online. I went down Staples and was looking at them. They were like $299, $399 brand new. I can always go back to AT&T and get a laptop and just make payments on it. You know what I mean? And all that great stuff along with my cell phone. So ain't none of that a big deal. I'm getting ready to make a move on that. I want to actually do that before the 18th come so I can do some testing. And from what the SSA say, I'm still at 43 hertz. But I'll do some more testing again. I went from like 40 hertz, 41, 42, 43, 44 to see if my if my frequency went up or not. But once I get that SPL lab, I'll find out for sure. But it still was at 43. And Dre was with me, my boy, to oversee stuff and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Okay. So now, last but not least, what I wanted to talk about is I remember when I was running V-belts, okay, and I had two alternators, one on that end and one over on that end on the engine, and it took me forever to find somebody to make me a bracket on this side because originally the alternators on Oldsmobiles, well, back in like 74, the alternators were on the passenger side back in 74, and they had a bracket back in 74, but I couldn't find that bracket nowhere. It went on this side. This is a 1984, so when I got this, it had a bracket on this side. That same bracket fitted on a Cadillac. Okay, and I was trying to get a bracket for this side once I got a second alternator. Okay, now when I got that second alternator, I think it was around 2005, when I was seeing Vernon Sargent and Team Neo and Joseph Alton, all those guys out there in Ohio, when I was traveling out there in Ohio and competing. They had two alternators and stuff like that, and finally I found out where to go, and nobody could build a bracket. Nobody. So A couple years later, there's one mechanic I was dealing with named Mike. He had an alternator bracket from off of Summit Racing that was a Chevy bracket, an aftermarket bracket that went on his side. So what he did is he made it fit. And I did some tweaking on it after the fact, and it worked. So I had the 2 alternators. But then when I decided I want 3 and 4 alternators, I just happened to have met this guy from Ashtabula named PJ Moore, who basically is a mechanic and got everything in his backyard. You know what I mean? So he had told me I can make you a bracket to fit a 3rd alternator. You know what I mean? And when I finally let him do it, yes, he did it. But just with measuring tape and metal. And then he's like, I could fit one more in this area. So I gave in and let him do it. And when I started doing that, I had more alternators for those AGM batteries and those lead acid batteries I had in the trunk. Okay, and up here and stuff like that then. But each one of those alternators had its own belt. And it worked out. But the downfall was the power steering pump. You know, you had to put a crowbar in between them to tighten them. And they had to be tight in order to spin and work right. So I put I guess there was too much tension on a power steering pump, but then again, if it wasn't tightened enough, it would slip. But every time I did that, it would break the rubber seal. So in order to correct that, it took a minute. We dumped that stop leak power steering fluid in there, and it would swell up that seal and stop it from leaking. But that was in the end. By that time, you know, when I would be sitting out in front of Advanced Auto Parts and all of that, everybody was coming through there looking in there. There were certain guys who would come through there and go, I can build you a serpentine belt setup. Even PJ Moore was talking about building me a serpentine belt setup, and he would have been one of the only dudes that could have done it. But since I didn't have the pulleys and stuff like that, which we could have got them from the junkyard as well. But I was satisfied with what I had, but finally I wanted to give in and get a serpentine belt setup because one too many guys was talking about doing it for me. But whenever I would call them, they would be off the grid. They would disappear. And I started getting mad because I was like, why come past and look in there and volunteer to build something that you cannot build or you couldn't build in the first place? So I went through some years of dealing with this. Okay? And so, with that being said, there was this mechanic shop up in Lower Borough that a couple of the mechanics that came down to Advanced Auto Parts and saw this down there, and they was mesmerized by it and the sound system as well. And they went back and told their boss, hey, you ought to see this old school car, man. He got 4 alternators in there, yada, yada, yada. So the owner wanted to see the car. So one day, one of the mechanics got in touch with me on Facebook. It was like, hey, can you drive up here? The owner wants to see your car, and gave me the address, and I drove up there. And I opened up the hood, and it was alls, you know, and they're looking in here like, wow. And I was like, hey, man, do you think you guys can build me a serpentine belt bracket? Now, this is what this video is really all about. And they said, sure, we can do it. Okay, and it didn't happen right away. You know what I mean? But right before state finals in 2018, Pennsylvania state finals, they attempted to do it. A week before state finals, it was held right out here in New Kensington. And I knew I should not have done that because it went ass backwards. Technically, they didn't know what to do. And we took everything out of here, and come that Saturday, they had my car all week. And every day I went up there, they didn't, you know, it just was a catastrophe, man. And it did not get built at all. And I was tripping, you know, on Saturday evening, and the owner had spent a couple nights at the shop trying to figure out what to do. To make a long story short, and that's when I met Artius Reynolds. At the competition, he came out with his basin tow truck. We actually called up the owner. He's like, dude, don't forget you can compete off your batteries alone. But I didn't do no street beating runs, and that cost me states. Technically, it cost me states, to make a long story short. They towed the car down there. They towed it into the lanes. Yes, it will still start up and run off the batteries. And I went in there, still did a 160 off batteries alone. Off batteries alone. But I didn't do no street beating runs. I still did my dueling demos and all of that. You know, ISPL and all that, it cost me states. Okay, and then Artius took the car back to Ohio with him, and they did an alternator which pulled a bracket off of an old school Chevy truck and fabricated a little bit. But I went through a whole bunch of problems trying to straighten it out, belts flying off, belts wearing out, chirping, screaming in the morning. You know, I went through hell, changing pulleys, changing belts. I got back down here and tweaked it in the winter, in the summer. You know what I mean? Until finally I got it right, and then I got it to the point where it was working. It took like a couple years to get it to really work, and all the pulleys and belts and pulleys and stuff I was buying and returning a lot of stuff that didn't work, and got into it almost with a manager at O'Reilly's. I had it out for him. I had it out for that guy, man. I did. He don't work there no more. I don't even go to O'Reilly's no more. I don't spend my money there no more. I don't go to them. You know what I mean? I spend, you know, when I feel I spend my hard-earned money on stuff. And you guys, you know, those owners are multi-billionaires, and you mean you're that damn greedy to be upset when stuff ain't working and it get brought back? That's the problem I have with them. You know what I mean? So I stopped, you know, but I said, let me design an alternator bracket that will work. Let me design it. I wanted them to go straight across, not slant down or do none of that. I was going to make it go straight across. I could have had it pull more over here towards this way. I could have, but you know, that hose, that radiator hose, I wish, you know, I could have, you know, it you know, would work out better where that would be right in the middle. But nevertheless, it's doing its job now. Okay? I always thought the guys that built alternators were capable of building alternator brackets. This is where I fell into problems. When I first went, my teammates were getting Jonathan Patrick to build them 320s and 370s and all of that. You know what I mean? And I was hearing about this guy. You know what I mean? And finally I decided to take a drive out to CES one day to see if he can build my 254 alternators into 320s. And I remember one of his guys coming to look under the trunk and seeing all those V-belts. And he was like, "Holy Mother of God," he said when he looked in there. But they didn't realize that all of that was working. And I wanted a serpentine belt setup. And I was like, I asked Jonathan, can you build me a serpentine belt setup? And he talked about asking one of his friends to help him, who I don't get along with, for the simple fact that I tried getting along with him and it backfired. I tried getting along with this guy, and he don't understand my sense of humor, my 61-year-old sense of humor. You know what I mean? And he took it the wrong way, and for that reason, we don't get along at all. And I'm like, you know, I'm not kissing nobody's ass to be their friend. I'm an OG, man. We did things differently back in the day. I'm not kissing nobody's ass in church or none of that to be their friend. If you decide you don't want to be cool with me, then move on. So what? You don't pay my bills. You're not putting no food on my table, man. I don't need nobody's validation or anything. Yeah, I like when cats, you know, compliment me on my build and stuff like that, but I don't really care if you don't like me and stuff like that. Man, you people really need to know that all the way through your asshole. I don't care, technically. And it can go further than that. You know what I mean? So I always thought guys that build alternators can build the brackets as well, and I see that they can. They can build the alternators, but they can't do bracket stuff. And here, I'm not a mechanic. There's certain things I can do on my car. I can rebuild my carburetor. I know how to tune up my own car, put in spark plugs. As you see, I can wrap belts and stuff like that. I'm the one that designed that alternator manual tensioner as well. Somebody threw that idea at me over social media, and I started working on how I would do it and how it will work. And I came up with that myself. I should have been an engineer. You know what I mean? I had to have somebody weld it. Like the prototype that I built looked similar to that. I had everything bolted together, but I went to a mechanic and had him weld certain spots. And then I went down to Glenshaw Steel, the same people that made my bumpers, and I took the measurements down to them, and they came up with that, which is the same one. I had the measurements of how I wanted it and everything. You see? So now, you know, the mechanic I go to, Ben Hank, he's capable. He can weld, and he can think of things. But before I started going to him and he was down here, you know, he had a unit down here, and he would come and see me down here, and was not using him at the time. He'd always come in there and say, hey, man, you know, you called me, and that didn't work out at first either because he was never around when I needed him. But now he is now. So now we're coming up with some stuff to get some shocks, some strong shocks under here and some other stuff, and then do that in the trunk too. You know what I mean? So he can do little things. Me and him could have made a bracket. We actually would have got it done way faster than this one. It probably would have been a little bit better because he was using his ideas and mine together. Like with that one bar down there to stop it from moving, and I had him do those two bars coming off the back of that bracket down there to stop it from shifting, and you know, I had to deal with the shifting and belts flying off and all of that, man, and tweaking and turning. That's a lot of work and a lot of time down here, man. You know what I mean? And I came up with those right there too. I came up with them. Had it welded by one guy, Mike. But came up with those two to give us some strength. You got to get it some strength and stop this from shaking. You know what I mean? So, you know, all of that as well, man. So this is a lot of work, a lot of thinking, a lot of this and a lot of that. As I said, those over there are all ignition. That's all ignition over there. Because I got tired of, you can't put all that up under the doggone dashboard. You know what I mean? I had to come up with, you know, jumping from the dashboard to those. And now when I have ignitions, I can just hook them up, ignitions up to them. You know what I mean, period. That's an easy do. But these alternators, I misled these, so Tony's supposed to be making me an extra one. And down the line, I might get another extra one to have a couple of them whenever these go bad, and I got to send them all the way back to him. And wait, I can throw another one on. Because stuff like this will happen on a day you might want to go and base and not get problems. You know what I mean? I could just swap, done. Okay? So that's that. And come the 18th of May, TC Customized Contest again. But I need to do some testing because I had predicted a 63 while everybody's predicting 65. And it ain't like I can't get that in the car. I got some leaks in there. There's a leak down there. Right down there, there's a hole. Right down in there, there's a hole. I need to get down there, patch that up, and do some other stuff. And it can be a 65. It can be. You know what I mean? It can be, bro. All right, so I'm going to get off here because it's getting too long for Facebook. You know what I mean? But you know, I'm pretty cool with this setup. Yes, I will change speakers and stuff like that where I can just put in, but I ain't trying to do the baffle over. If I got to change amps or subs, that can happen easily with them fitting in. With them fitting in the same holes. Okay, and I got to sand. What I'm going to do is sand all this stuff off here and repaint it and go to another person to get some graphics, bro, because, yeah, man, I can't find my dude. And I want to get Resilient Sounds and that name on my car and Stetson, you know. But it's your boy, the OG, coming to you direct. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And peace, people. Hope you got something out of this.